Welcome to the PJH Writing Command Center for another podcast episode from God Bless the Keg Publishing LLC. And this is a special Halloween podcast, the Spooky Season Part 2.
I love that monster guy. Hey, welcome to the PJH Writing Command Center. I am Paul John Hausleben of God Bless the Keg Publishing LLC, in case you couldn't understand the monster guy. And we welcome you to this special Halloween podcast episode, Spooky Season Part 2 of the God Bless the Keg Publishing podcast series. And I am Paul John Hausleben of God Bless the Keg Publishing LLC. I am the flagship author, chief photographer, music reviewer, music critic, chief cook, bottle washer, and do everything guy with a little help from my friends. And some of my friends are here. They're a little unruly, but we're going to scare them into submission in the corner with our scary, spooky season stories here today. If you are a long-time listener, welcome back. If you are a first-time tuner-inner to this crazy guy from New Jersey, well then welcome. And we're just thrilled you're here. But before we get started, let me rattle pages for special effects here in the background. Get your little orphan Andy decoder pins out. I can't believe that it's already Halloween. And before you know it, it'll be Thanksgiving. I love Thanksgiving. And, of course, Christmas will be coming up soon. So, my goodness gracious, these years, it just flies by. But speaking of Christmas, get your little Orphan Annie decoder pins out. And this podcast is proudly sponsored by Corporate Facilities Group Incorporated, the leader in technical consulting, facilities maintenance, facilities management and operations, as well as property maintenance and management services throughout America. And now CFG Incorporated is proud to announce a new department, a new initiative headed up by the amazing Steve McMillan. Steve brings his many years of experience as he manages pre-construction services and estimating for residential development, residential renovations, and light commercial projects for CFG Incorporated. So, before you spend big bucks and waste any money on a project, let old Steve Aruski check out the contractor scope and price to make sure your hard-earned money is going in exactly the right place. Don't get snookered. Tell him Paulie sent you and check it out with Steve. Check them out on the web at www.corporatefacilitiesgroup1.com. That's www.corporatefacilitiesgroup1.com. You can also click on the little link koozie in the podcast episode website and let the magic of the internet take you to CFG's website. So we thank Lydia, Steve, Liliana, Summer, the woofy doggy, and Smokey, the kitty cat at CFG Incorporated for sponsoring the podcast. Yes, indeed. Thank you so much. And we would also like to thank for the spooky Halloween music. Background music for video. Background music for video. You can find them on Pixabay. And they have fantastic music for all your needs. And check them out. Make a little donation. Here at God Bless the Keg Publishing LLC, we're all about independent artists. So throw a few coins in the fountain there. And that's fantastic stuff. So thank them so much for the music. And it's really cool. And we really appreciate it. And I'm so sorry, I have so many events that came in this week, and I've been so busy, and now it's Halloween, so, oh my goodness, I will get to them. I missed a couple Halloween events, and I'm sorry for that, but we have some Veterans Day events, so I have plenty of time for that. Goodness gracious, everything's running over me. So the 11th of November, which is Veterans Day, let's give it up for the veterans. Yeah. We have in Butler, New Jersey, at the Richard Butler School, 3 Pearl Place, Butler, New Jersey, zip 07405. We have a special Veterans Day breakfast from 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. on the Memorial Field Track at the Richard Butler School, 3 Pearl Place, Butler, New Jersey. So if you need any information on that, you can email A. Spellman at Butler, BOE, that's Bravo Oscar Echo.org. And we appreciate their efforts for the veterans out there. That's fantastic stuff. So happy Veterans Day is coming up. So, on this podcast episode, which is part 2 of the spooky season, once more, we're going to um, tell some stories of real life experiences and episodes and adventures and encounters that Paulie has had over the years in his long career of taking care of all types of buildings, properties. Let me see now. We have corporate headquarters, we have office buildings, we got medical buildings, we got hospitals, and in one case, we have a college university, and that'll be the first story I tell. That used to be an orphanage. So, yeah, wow. Can you imagine the history there? The pain, maybe some joy? Yeah, lots of joy. Despair, an orphanage. So let's get to the stories here. So the orphanage university is in New England, in Connecticut. And I took a gig with an old military buddy of mine. And a listener to the podcast and a reader of my books reminded me that some of these stories are in my book Experiences, a series of essays on my life. And I did tell a number of the unexplained stories in one of the essays. And I don't know if this one was in there or not. But anyway, hooked up with a military buddy of mine, old Navy guy, who did work for the Department of the Navy, and he was a engineer, mechanical engineer. And he got a short-term contract to check out mechanical systems on this old university up in Connecticut. And, New England, one of the oldest, if not the oldest, along with Virginia, part of the original 13 colonies where the country was originally settled, has a lot of history, a lot of stuff, and a lot of ghosts. in my years of living all around, I remember we had a house in New Hampshire, in Laconia, beautiful area, lovely. And I remember purchasing that house and then eventually selling it, and we had to disclose if there were ghosts in the house. So, New England, old, not old in terms of like England. My cousins laugh at me that, here in America, we're still a pretty young country. And, but at any rate, New England settled, Massachusetts with the Pilgrims and all that stuff. And Connecticut has a lot of history. And so we were taking care of this property and doing an assessment on the mechanical systems there. And my buddy from the Navy, great guy, Irish guy, we spent a lot of time down at an Irish pub in New Haven. I swear we would work half a day and then spend the rest of the day at the pub telling stories. And at any rate, so we had to fire all these old boilers, steam boilers, hot water boilers in the campus. And some of this stuff goes back to ancient times. And that's why my buddy called me. He's like, Paulie, I really need you and your boiler expertise to get some of these old boys and old girls back on the line. So I came up there and helped them for about 4 months. And it was a fun gig, and we met a lot of cool people. But anyway, I fired a lot of the mechanical systems. So part of the assessment there was for me to grab some of the maintenance guys, the facility maintenance guys there, and ask them for some help. And this was a unionized campus, so all the employees were union. So I'm used to navigating that from my Jersey days and everything. And up in the Northeast, that's common. So I would have to get all permission and schedule the work orders and get all this stuff. So one day, I needed the mechanical systems in this one building. I'm going to call it the A building. And I needed to do a baseline on how the air handlers were performing. And once more, this is a very, very old campus. Some of the buildings were new. They built them new. Some of the buildings they recommissioned from the olden days when it was an orphanage. And the A building, for lack of a better word, was now an office building. That's where a lot of offices were. And it was a really cool building, had 4 floors, and then it went up into this cool little spiral that went straight up. And that's where the witches will circle on Halloween night around the top of the spiral, right? And everybody liked to work in the A building because it was very eclectic and it was cool and it had neat architecture and it was old, and they retrofitted all the mechanical systems and the plumbing and the electric and the mechanicals to provide heating and air conditioning, modern day amenities, despite the age of the building. So it really had a lot of history to it. And the air handler rooms, which are the big, for lack of a better word, the big fans that would blow the heat and the cold into the building ductwork, into the systems, were located in wings off these floors. And because it was retrofitted, the rooms were narrow and tight, and it was really a marvel of engineering to get modern systems into such an old building. So I met with a team of 2 union guys, and I was like, hey guys, I really need all the air handlers filters change on these air handlers, and I need a baseline measurement. I need this and I need that and some technical things. And they're like, yeah, no problem, Paulie. We'll go change the filters, and then you can do your technical stuff with the engineer afterwards. So they were more than happy to do it. So I set them out with a bunch of paperwork and all the filters to change on these air handlers. And I was working in my office going over some pictures and some data. And my buddy was in another room there, and he was going over some engineering baselines. And we're putting together our reports for the management of the campus. And these maintenance guys come stomping in, and they're like, we're done. They come stomping in the office. I was like, what happened, guys? What's going on? They're like, we're never going in the A building ever again. Nope, done. We're not going there. I was like, okay, calm down. Tell me what happened. And they're like, we already told our supervisor, you guys are on your own. You want those filters changed? Go back and do it yourself. We won't file any union grievances for outside consultants doing our work. We're done. We ain't going there. I was like, what happened? Somebody get on you? And they're like, oh, no. And the air handler kind of cut the room in half because it was retrofitted. And one guy had to slide under the mechanical fans and get on the other side, and then his buddy would slide the new filters to him. And the door to the hallway, the main hallway, was right in back of the guy handing the filters to the other guy. It was very narrow and small. And he said, we're on the 4th floor of the building. We're almost done. And my partner, the one guy, I'll call him Jeff. Jeff's standing on the other side. He says, my partner's sliding the air handler filters underneath the unit, and I'm sticking them in. Then I slide the old filter back, and I look up, and there's a kid, a little boy, standing in the hallway outside, and he's got a striped shirt on, and he's wearing a pair of shorts, and he's bouncing a ball in the hallway, and he's looking at us. And I took the filter, and I said to my buddy, I was like, you better tell that kid to get out of here. He can't come in this room. There's a lot of dangerous equipment in here. And then I bent down and I put the filter in, and my partner's like, what kid? And when I looked up, I was like, the kid is in the hallway bouncing the ball. And my buddy turns around, and I went back down and picked up another filter. And when I looked up, there was no kid there. And my partner turns around. He says, "There's no kid in the hallway. I don't know what you're talking about." He says, "Like, I am telling you, there was a kid in the hallway with a striped shirt on and blue shorts, and he was bouncing the ball. And then he kind of caught his breath, and he's like, and I didn't hear the ball making any noise on the hallway." He says, "That's it. We're out of there. We are out of there, and we are not going back." So I have no reason. Once more, my disclaimer is like in part one, these are stories of the unexplained. I didn't witness this one myself, but these guys, these are seasoned maintenance guys. These guys are not 20 years old. Some of them were 50, 60, getting ready to retire. They're like, we're not going back. I have no reason not to believe that they encountered something that they couldn't explain. But I was like, well, guys, I still need the air handlers filters changed. They're like, just go back and do it yourself. We're not going to file any grievance. Just go do what you need to do. He said, the filters are still there in the room. We sprinted out and we left, and we're not going back. So I went back and I changed the rest of the filters myself. I slid under the air handler, and I didn't experience any little boys bouncing balls. I didn't see any little boys with blue shirts, striped shirts, and blue shorts, or nothing. But I have no, like I said, I have no explanation of what they saw that day that scared the bejesus out of them. Where they came into the office absolutely freaking out and not wanting to go back. So that's the orphanage. And at that college campus, they had a paranormal club, and they couldn't get anybody to. I guess after the story of the kid with the ball, none of the maintenance people, none of the administrators, nobody would sponsor, and I mean sponsor, stay the night in the one main hall, which was actually the main part of the orphanage, um, the main building in the center of the campus. So I said, I'll spend the night these young college students. And they had for lack of a better word, the Ghostbusters stuff, these electronic detection systems and these things. And they had special cameras with lenses. And they spent the night in the hall, patrolling around and sitting in the dark. And I sat with them because they needed somebody to make sure they could unlock doors and not get themselves in trouble and wander into electrical panels or whatever. And we spent the whole night while these young people walked around the whole building with their little Geiger counters or whatever it was, snapping pictures. And I know a little bit about photography. I was kind of like, these guys are wasting your time. But at any rate, they paid me for the for the extra duty. So I was like, okay, but they didn't detect anything. I said, you should have gone to the A building with the kid with the ball. So that was my orphanage experience, and I have no reason not to believe these guys. They were scared out of their wits. But at any rate, so my next story comes from an office building, a very large, almost, I'm going to say 300,000 square foot office building that used to be the headquarters for a very, very famous retailer, a corporate headquarters. In fact, the whole campus, the whole office park used to be all a part of that famous retailer. And the retailer went through hard times, the Great Recession of 2008, and eventually went bankrupt and then had to liquidate. Very, very sad times, very painful. Lots of people there. At one time, there were 7,500 people on the campus between employees and visitors and contractors, and people lost their livelihoods. They lost their pensions, they lost their stock investments, they lost their incomes. Very, very sad, very tragic. And I was stationed as a contractor there, and doing my usual thing, facilities, and went through good times there, and went through some bad times. And there was an incident there where a very distraught woman, unfortunately, died under very tragic circumstances. And I was there at the time, and it was quite sad and a terrible incident. And then there was another incident where these executives were on this business trip, and unfortunately, they had a small aircraft, small plane while they were flying around to this business trip, and the plane crashed. And I think there were three executives who perished. So, um, some tragedies, and when you have big companies, you have all these different people. These things happen in life, and life goes on, and it's a lot of things, and you never know what's going through people's lives. And then you combine it with the business went downhill, and the Great Recession, and the business closing, and the tragedies, and all these things happened in this complex. And for the most part, I was pretty much assigned to the one building. There were three buildings on the campus, and I was assigned to the one building for most of my career. I worked in all of them, but for most of the time, I spent in the one building, and that happened to be the building where the executives worked that perished, as well as the young woman who tragically died. And unfortunately, she took her own life in that building. And I'm not going to go into the horrible circumstances, very tragic. But so that one building had a lot of pain and a lot of suffering. And for a guy who spent and spends his career in my primary source of income within buildings, I feel the energy. Like I said in part one, I can feel a bad building, I can feel a good building, I can feel positive, I can feel negative, and we're all energy. And everything is energy around us. And these buildings, I know these systems, I know the plumbing, I know the electric, I know the chiller plants, and I know all these things that are happening. And I can walk in and feel the heartbeat of the building that I spent a lot of time in. I can sense if something's wrong. If something doesn't sound right. I guess it's like getting in your car and you start your car up and you hear a weird noise and you're like, uh-oh, something's wrong. Then the check engine light comes on. The dreaded check engine light. And unfortunately, the company liquidated and bankruptcy, liquidation. It went through uh, federal court and all this drama and everything. And the last guy standing was Paulie. And my boss at the time was like, just hang out. Let's see what's going on there. And sure enough, a receiver came and we took care of the building through all these adventures and vacancies and downtime. And the only one in the building really was me. And I would have to walk around the building and maintain it and keep it going. Sometimes I didn't even have, till the receiver came, I didn't have electricity. I didn't have plumbing. I didn't have heat, didn't have air conditioning, but we were getting paid by the court, so my boss kept me there for a little bit of time, and I would encounter these strange episodes, very strange episodes. And the only way I'm not a person that's easily spooked. And in my disclaimer, I say I have no way to explain these things. But I would be in this gigantic building, this building that had pain, this building that had a history where people lost their livelihoods, in some cases lost their lives, and they lost their investments and their stocks and their careers. And I believe that energy and pain somehow stays in the atmosphere. It stays in the environment. I don't know how to explain it, but I would walk around checking my building and maintaining it the best I could with the limited resources. And I felt a presence, just a presence. And doors would open and close, and elevators would go up and down, and sinks would turn on and off, and toilets would flush. And I'd be on the third floor and hear footsteps and like almost like a whispering. I don't know how to describe it. Like inaudible. I couldn't understand was being said, but it would be just like hodgepodge noises. And I'm the only one in the facility. Now, I did have another person who worked for me, Danny. And Danny and I would split some time. But Danny, even in the Great Recession, was assigned to another account, a church in town that he would take care of. But he would come over and help me on occasion. And he would say the same thing. He's like, "Hey, Paulie, I was in the building the other day, and there was doors. I hear that." He said, "Does anybody else have keys to the building?" I was like, "Nah, I'm hearing the same stuff." And particularly on floor number 5. Now, floor number 5, the person who passed away that tragically took their they happened to, for lack of a better word, perish on floor number 5. Actually jumped off a staircase and committed suicide. Um, and it's technically floor number 6 in conjunction with floor number 5. And as I would walk around number 5, I'd hear a whispering, this noise in my ears. I don't know how to describe it other than those noises. And it wasn't really audible. Now, the person who passed away was a woman, and she had went through some family issues, and she met with the pastor of her church at lunch, and then that day she climbed up on the staircase and committed suicide. So it's a woman, and at times the voice was high-pitched like it was a woman. And at first I thought it was the sound masking in the building. Sound masking is a system that drowns out other noises, and they use it at office buildings for confidential conversations or whatever. And then I thought it was the air handlers, and I thought it was the ductwork, and I thought it was the air going through there, and then I thought it was my imagination. And I kind of almost got used to it. And then on the 5th floor, when I would get on my rounds, and we had to contractually do rounds once a day, in the morning, and then once, I should say twice a day, once in the morning, once in the late afternoon, then lock up. When I would get to the center lobby, there would be a moaning. And it was loud. And I thought at first it was an air valve on a ventilation box closing. And I realized it really wasn't. So I'm not a guy that gets easily scared or spooked. And I just would brush it off. And then when Danny would testify to the same things, I knew we both were kind of going through these same experiences. And this went on for 3 or 4 months until the building finally got out of receivership, and a new owner, purchased it. Hallelujah. Occupancy. Life is going to be normal again. Or so I thought. So a new owner came in, and life was looking good. I hired another guy to give me a hand there, and his name was Ralph, and we're getting everything going, and new owner comes in, and we're going to fix stuff up and clean the building up, and we got electricity back, and we got plumbing back, and we cut the grass, and it's like life is coming back to the building. The Great Recession is ending. And every day, Danny faded away a little bit. He had his primary duties. He would still come. But Ralph and I would, maintain the facility and clean it up. And we're looking for new occupants, and things are getting good. But part of our contractual was to check it on weekends, the building on weekends. So my ticket got punched on a Saturday. And I remember coming to this building on a Saturday. And I walked around the building. I would patrol the outside, make sure there was nobody, with nefarious intentions breaking into the building. And then I would go inside. And there were no cars. It was a beautiful Saturday. I remember it was like late spring, early summer, whatever. And nobody in the parking lot. And I'm open up the door, and I start my rounds. And this building is huge. A huge building. And it has huge high atrium type lobby, glass. It's gorgeous. And when I get on the first floor, I hear men speaking, distinctive. blah, 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 blah. But I can't understand what they're saying. But it's men's voices, deep voices. And I think it's coming from the upper reaches on the fifth floor, but it's echoing. And I hear doors opening and closing. So I was like, oh, okay. It's the new owners. They must be here checking the building out. So I pop in the elevator and go up to the fifth floor and start walking around. And I still hear was on one particular side of the building, men talking. But I can't understand what they're saying, and doors slamming, opening, closing, like gibberish. I was like, wow, it's really echoing. But there's no furniture, there's nothing in this building, it's vacant. So I figured the echo is normal. And I go over to that side of the building, and there's nobody there. And when I get to the side of the building, the doors stop opening and slamming and closing. And I don't hear the men's voices anymore. And now I'm like, wow, where are they? And I run to the windows and I look in the loading dock and there's no cars. And I run to the front windows and I look in the parking lot and there's no cars. There's nobody here. And then it goes through my mind, those executives that perished years ago, because I've been in the building for all these years. They sat on the fifth floor on the west side. And I'm like, man, what's going on? There has to be an explanation. So I grab my cell phone and I dial up the new owner of the building, and he answers right away. And I was like, hey, I'm in the building. Are you guys here in the building today? He's like, no, we're out of town. We're in another state. I said, oh, okay. I thought I heard. I didn't want to scare him. I didn't want to get into the details. And I was like, I haven't been to the pub. There's no cars in the driveway. There's no cars in the parking lot. There's no cars in the loading dock. Danny isn't here. He's the only other guy that has keys other than the guy I'm talking to on the phone. Once more, don't have an explanation. All I can say is what I encountered. Then we get to other testimonies as the building gets more occupied and more people move in. And other people are reporting this stuff. And then we had some painting contractors, some Spanish guys who didn't speak English too well. But we're finally got a tenant, and we're doing some build-outs and some construction. And these painters, these team of Spanish guys come in, and they're painting up on that fifth floor again. And all of a sudden, I have an uprising. And I'm in my office, and the construction superintendent comes in with the Spanish guys and a translator, and they're walking off the job. They're walking off the job because they can't take it anymore with this woman who is whispering in their ears while they're working up there, and there's no women on the job, and they don't see any women, and they don't see any woman who keeps talking to them on the fifth floor. And they left the job. And I guess over the years, I became kind of used to it. And I call the ghost Penny. I call her Penny. And I think she sees me as the caretaker of the property. And she loves me in her own way. And I love her because she's been there for all these years. And I've been there for all these years. And she really talks to me. And I hear the moans sometimes early in the morning. But it doesn't bother me. I kind of think we've been together. I had to convince Ralph that Penny is not an offensive ghost, and she means well, and she really cares about the building, because Ralph happened to go up to the penthouse, the sixth floor, in the exact spot that unfortunately this woman decided to take her life. And he swore to me. He took his cell phone out of his pocket to call me. And I guess Penny didn't know him at the time. He was new to the building. And he says, Paulie, I took my cell phone out because I wanted to call you because I forgot my key and I couldn't get in the penthouse. And this force, he described it as a force, tore the cell phone out of my hand and threw it down the stairs. And my cell phone's destroyed. He says, I swear, Paul, I didn't destroy the company's cell phone. He was very upset. Ralph was very upset. He said, something tore the cell phone out of my hands. And I was like, Ralph, you were standing in her spot and she doesn't know you. He's like, what? Who? Huh? And I had to explain the story to him. And even to this day, I'm still involved in that building. And it doesn't bother me walking around there early, late at night. I guess I'm used to it. And I don't get so many testimonies anymore. It seems as when the building was vacant and then there was construction and the building was sad. Penny was sad too. And I was sad. And that goes back to the energy. That goes back to what I think exists in this world, the unseen, the unexplained. And then when the building came back to life and occupants and things happened and there was happiness, and I think Penny was happy, as I was happy too, to see life come back into such a sad situation. But one night, I very often have to sit at the front lobby of the building and kind of be, for lack of a better word, security or lobby services or whatever. And it's hard to explain, but the building has a series of glass doors, and I'm sitting there in the lobby, and I've sat there for all these years. And this was fairly recent, and it was getting kind of sort of late at night, not super late, 7 o'clock, and my shift ends at 8. And most people are gone. There's 1 or 2 cars in the parking lot, and I know the people that drive them. And this kind of comes to be mindless after a while. You sit there for all these hours. And I was sitting there relaxing, and I turned around, and it's hard to see through the glass, especially as the nighttime comes, because it's dark outside and there's different lights. And I looked towards the lobby elevators, and there was a woman there outside the elevator, and the doors were open to the one elevator. And I noticed she was waving to me. And I turned around. I was like, oh, I don't know who that is, but, I want to be rude or anything. So I waved back. And I waved back, and she waved. And I was like, I wonder who that is. And then I turned away, and I looked out the front, and I turned back, and she was gone. And the elevators make a distinctive noise when they go up and down. I know this building like the back of my hand. And she wasn't there. And then in my mind, in my mind's eye, she was wearing a yellow dress. And it wasn't the yellow dress you would wear in this day and age, for lack of a better word. It was like a yellow dress from a bygone era. And she waved to me, and I waved back. And then she was gone. Once more, I don't have an explanation. All I can tell you is what I experienced. Ooh. And my final story on Spooky Season Part 2, Happy Halloween to everybody, as the lights turn down low and the candles and the pumpkins flicker and the witches circle on the brooms and the trick-or-treaters go door to door. And you guys in the corner aren't so confident now, huh? You're kind of holding on to each other's hands. Oh, yeah, it was the woman in the yellow dress that I waved to, right? So, Harry and Paul adventure back in old New Jersey town, Route 208. And it runs from about Route 4 near the George Washington Bridge all the way up to the base of Skyline Drive in Oakland, New Jersey. It's a fairly recent highway in the big scheme of things. And there's a famous, and you can't do this anymore, and you really weren't supposed to do it back in the day and age when Harry and Paul used to do it. But there was a legend in Franklin Lakes, New Jersey, and it was an off-ramp, and I'm not even going to mention the name of the road because I don't want anybody getting in trouble, but it was called Gravity Hill, and it was an exit off of Route 208, southbound. It would be southbound Route 208. And you can probably find videos on the big video channel, and, young teenagers that do this, and I don't know if it's been still being done now, because I understand that they reworked all the roadway on the exit ramp, and I wonder why. But we would hear these urban legends, these crazy things. And Harry and Paul decided to give it a whirl one day about the exit known as Gravity Hill. And the legend was that Gravity Hill was a very steep incline going downhill from Route 208 to the road that it intersected. I'm not going to mention the name of the road, but it was Franklin Lakes, New Jersey. And I actually wrote a chapter in my first full-length novel, The Night Always Comes, and I I depicted this incident in Harry and Paul Adventures in The Night Always Comes, and it happened sort of kind of similar to what it happened. But Harry and I would hear these urban legends, and the legend was there was a young woman walking along the road at that intersection, and a car came flying down the highway and unfortunately ran her over, and she perished at that intersection. The car coming off the highway did not pay attention to the stop sign, didn't see her. It was dark, and she got hit by the car and died at that intersection. So now the intersection is haunted by her ghost. And whenever a car comes to the stop sign, in defense, she pushes the car back up the ramp. And the ramp is a very steep, or it was back in our day, a steep incline from the highway to the stop sign. So much that you would be like, it's crazy. I mean, this is downhill. There's no way that anything can go uphill. So Harry and I would hear these urban legends, and people would talk about Gravity Hill and ghosts, and the young girl who died there, and her ghost patrols and doesn't allow a car to stop there, and all this crazy stuff. And Harry and I would always get out of Patterson and Haledon because we would go to the outskirts. Because we might find some young ladies that wouldn't know that we were a bunch of poor bums from Patterson and Haledon. So we go to the rich areas and cruise around. And Harry had I'm going to use the word that I use in the book, the Trans Whizzer. He bought a brand new Trans Whizzer, and you know what it is. Beautiful car with the Firebird on the hood and the hopped up engine, and it was just a gorgeous vehicle. So one night, Harry and I were cruising around. We heard this urban legend. So Harry's like, let's try it, Paulie. And he had a manual transmission. So we got to the off ramp, and we came to the stop sign, and we put the car in neutral, and the car rolled uphill. And it just didn't go uphill a little bit. It went uphill like 20 feet, and it kept going uphill. I was like, no, Harry, come on. This can't be. There's got to be. Logical Paulie once more took over. So Harry put the brake on. And being hockey players, we had hockey balls and hockey pucks and stuff in our car. And I took a hockey ball that we played street hockey with, and I jumped out of the car. And you got to be careful because, there's cars coming off the interstate here. So it's crazy. And that's why the police would patrol it and stop any crazy kids and teenagers from doing this crazy stuff on Gravity Hill. And I took the hockey ball and I put it on the surface of the roadway, and it went downhill. But the car, the Trans Whizzer, went uphill. So fast forward to Paulie and Harry having a date with, two pretty young ladies, and it's like the Halloween, it's the spooky season time of the year, and we're like, let's hit a couple bars and have some fun, and we're out cruising, and these girls, and then we're like, hey, have you ever gone to Gravity Hill? And Harry's like, yeah, did you ever hear the story of the ghost? Anything that we could do to maybe get a hug out of these young ladies, right? And they're like, nah, we don't know what you're talking about. So we were like, okay, we'll take you. So we cruise on over to Gravity Hill. Now it's October. It's right around Halloween. It's this time of year, and it's cold. It's a cold night in New Jersey, and it's getting a little frosty out there. And there's a little frost on the pumpkin, and frost on the car, and frost in the air. And we go down Gravity Hill. We get off the interstate, and we had told them the story, the ghost, and the ghost pushes, and they're like, yeah, sure. And we get to the stop sign, and Harry puts the trans whizzer in neutral, and the car starts going uphill. And the girls are like, oh my, yeah, that's kind of crazy. And we get uphill. And in this instance, a policeman came down the hill. So we put it in gear and went around and came back after he left. I don't think he saw us doing, going backwards. We didn't get a ticket or anything. So Harry came circling back around. And that just added to the fun and the whole adventure and the ghost story and blah, blah, blah. So we come back around and we had to go, southbound and then northbound and come back southbound on 208 and come off the same exit ramp. And we get to the stop sign and the car goes back uphill. I jump out to do the ball trick, to show the girls. But I look at the hood of the trans whizzer. Beautiful. It was brown with metal flake. And there were enough streetlights there. And there are two handprints on the hood in the frost of the trans whizzer. And I said, Harry, you're not going to believe this, but did you close your hood? Did you check your battery today or something? You know how you could leave a print. He's like, what are you talking about? I haven't checked my battery or lifted the hood up. The car is almost brand new. It runs fine. I said, Harry, there's two handprints on the front of this car. I can see him in the frost. That was it. Harry's like, Polly, get back in the car. And the girls are like, get back in the car. And boom, we were gone. Oh my goodness gracious. Spooky season. Oh, wow. Happy Halloween, everybody. I hope you really enjoyed these spooky stories. And once more, I'm not a guy that gets easily scared. I think there's an explanation for a lot of this.
Spooky season. Happy Halloween.
But I just don't know what the explanation is for some of this. So there you go. PJH real life experiences with spooky encounters of the unexplained. You can draw your own conclusions. I don't know what to tell you other than what I've already told you. So have a great Halloween holiday, everybody. And I hope your trick or treat goes great. And I hope you have a fantastic Halloween. I think it's going to be just a great season. And before you know it, we'll be telling Thanksgiving stories and we'll be back with Christmas stories. And it's just so much fun. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hey, please be kind, be gentle, be very tolerant. Remember, kindness is for free. Spread it around as much as you can. It can only make this world a better place. And hey, I don't know how to explain these stories. I'm just a guy from Paterson, New Jersey. And you have a wonderful Halloween season. And we will see you next time. Thank you so much. All right, you guys. Now it's time to stop making a mess here. And it's time to get out of here. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.